What's going on, guys, and welcome to Who to Sign For. Now in this series I'm giving you my recommendations on what players to sign for a specific team in career mode. But before we go on, I will say that the signings you'll see aren't designed to be realistic, which is very important, and that the player ratings and potentials may vary depending on what database you're using and how they perform for you during the season. You don't have to follow all the tips. This is really just a set of guidelines to give you a hand if you're stuck for ideas and want some suggestions on what players you could sign for a certain club. This is mainly aimed at those of you out there who may be new to the game and just want some help, or for those of you out there who may be stuck for ideas on what players to sign for a certain team in career mode. So in today's episode of Who to Sign For, guys, we are going to take a look at Brighton and Hove Albion. We've done Newcastle United, we just did Huddersfield Town, so I thought why not do the third and only remaining team that gained promotion from the Championship to the Premier League for next season. And I thought Brighton would be a really interesting team. Now, as you would expect in the first season, their objectives are to gain automatic promotion and reach the round of 32 stage. And with a 3.5 star team, it's definitely achievable. They're a Championship side with an £8.8 million budget, as you'll see in just a moment's time as well. And certainly a side who I would really recommend a career mode with, because they've got a really good team, very decent at 3.5 star. But one of the best parts about this team is that there's so much you can do with it right from the get-go. There are certain teams in career mode, you take them over, they're sort of ready built for you, and you don't need to make too many changes, and sometimes you even can't with a lot of restrictions. But with this Brighton team, there is so much you can do in the first season with an £8.8 million budget as well. Very respectable. This is one of the most enjoyable second tier teams you could use for a career mode in FIFA 17. Now you see their team in just a moment's time. In fact, you'll see it right now actually. It's a 3.5 star team. It's pretty decent. There's a few aging players in there, but some decent youngsters too. For the most part though, if you want some really high potential players, you're not going to find too many here at Brighton. You're going to have to sign them yourselves, and as you'll see in today's episode, that's exactly what we do. But yeah, Chris Hughton has done a fabulous job with Brighton. He really has. He's guiding them to promotion to the Premier League for the first time in the club's history. A fabulous job at the Amex Stadium. I've always rated Chris Hughton as a manager. I remember many years ago now when he was sacked by Newcastle, I thought it was such an unjust sacking. Pardew took over then. That was back in 2010, I think. But he led them to the Premier League. He's now led Brighton to the Premier League. And I'd imagine with them getting a new stadium in the game for next year as well, presumably so, this is a team that a lot of you guys will want to do a career mode with next year. But as for players that are currently loaned out from Brighton in the game, there's one player that I recommend recalling from several, and that is Kazenga Lewa. He's got 4-star skills, a 4-star weak foot. It'll cost you around £354,000 to recall him. He's absolutely rapid, very decent, and he's good enough to go straight in your first 11. So recall him for a small transfer fee and bring him back to the Amex Stadium. And for players that their deals that come the end of the year, now there's quite a lot. There's several players who had their contracts that come the end of the year, and a couple of notable ones as well, such as Gaetan Bong and also Kayao, the central midfielder as well. Only one player I think would possibly get given a new deal, and that's David Stockdale. He is a 73 rated goalkeeper and 30 years old. Now you could do better than Stockdale, but I think for the first season, with all of your free goalkeepers out of contract come the end of the year, it's best to at least keep one of them. So I'd say give Stockdale the new deal. He deserves it, and keep Stockdale here at the Amex Stadium. But you might wonder why Kayao and Bong, very decent players, 73 rated, both of them, why I didn't give those guys new contracts. Well, the reason being is quite simple. You may have seen their salaries. They're very high, and 73 rated is pretty decent, especially for the Championship, but you can do better than that, and you can get new signings on cheaper wages. So I'd recommend selling them both, even though they are very important members of the Brighton team. But as I did see there were 3 goalkeepers out of contract in the summer. I gave one to David Stockdale. He accepted it, but I did sell the other 2. The Finnish goalkeeper, and also Kasper Ankergren, who's been at Brighton for absolutely ages now. He came from Leeds, the Danish shot stopper. But those 2 players right there, they're not going to be number 1. Stockdale is going to be your number 1 in the first season, so keep him here, let those 2 go, and then look for a new backup goalkeeper. But for new signings with Brighton, that's why you come to these videos. What signings would I recommend making for the Seagulls in the first season with £8.8 million in the budget? Well, the main area I'd say a concern is the right back. They've got Timothy Fosu-Mensah on my shortlist. He is a very talented young defender who's very versatile as well, 71 rated, and a player who you won't have to spend much more than his valuation for, as I also tried to sell Kai out here to Hull City. I could do with him in my Football Manager save for his valuation of £2.4 million. In the end, settled on £1.9 million. But Fosu-Mensah will be a really, really good signing for Brighton. You might spend a little bit over his valuation, but not too much more. And this is a right back who can play in a range of different positions. He's got some really, really great stats at just 19 years old, and he has got 18 years old, and he has got 86 potential at 71 rated, £2.4 million valuation. He's a really awesome young player in the game with some really good stats. And right now at Brighton, they've only got one right back listed in the game in their team, and that is of course the long-serving Spanish defender Bruno Saltor. But he's 72 rated, and as you'll see towards the end of this episode, he actually decides to retire in the first season. That's probably variable. It might not happen in your save with Brighton, but it did for me. So you're going to need a new right back. If not for cover, then certainly one for the long-term future. And Timothy Fosu-Mensah would be a fantastic choice for the number 2 role for many years to come at the Amex Stadium. He'd probably take over from Bruno's place in the first season, and he'd hold that down for the entire time you're with Brighton. He's a really, really awesome young defender. And again, one of the best things about him too, as we also sell Leon Rossinha here for £700,000, one of the best things about him is that he's so versatile. His stats are really well balanced. He can play centre-back. He's 6'2", I think it is, or 6'3", so tall enough for the centre-back role, and also play in a midfield position too. This is a really, really talented, well-rounded, versatile young defender, and certainly my number 1 target for a Brighton career mode. Always make sure you look for a new right-back, especially with Bruno coming towards the end of his playing days, set to decrease in ratings in the first season, and simply put, not that great anyway at 72 rated. You're going to need a new right-back, and in my opinion, with £8.8 million on the budget, you can afford to go after one of the best young right-backs in the game, and that is Timothy Fosu-Mensah. So Fosu-Mensah was the first signing I made. It took me a while, didn't it? But eventually Fosu-Mensah came in, and again, when you look at his stats once more, this guy is so well-rounded, and these guys prove their worth in gold, prove their weight, that they're worth their weight in gold when you have some sort of injury crisis or suspension crisis, because whilst you're playing in his primary position of right-back to begin with, if you ever have like an injury crisis in the CB role, even though Brighton have got some good depth in the CB role, then you can use Fosu-Mensah there. Or in the CM role, even though once again Brighton have good depth in the CM role, you can use Fosu-Mensah there. But really, such a well-rounded, versatile player. He's certainly my number 1 choice for right back, and I was very glad to get him in straight away. But as for more signings with Brighton, we still have a lot of money left over after selling a few players as well, and not spending much on the first guy, Timothy Fosu-Mensah. We also went in for this guy as well, another Dutch young talent, Matthijs de Ligt from Ajax, 16 years old in the game, 72 rated, valued at £3.1 million. We got him for £4 million, and what you might notice is the salary of de Ligt. It is so low, and we managed to get him in for 2.8 grand on a 5-year deal, which is just peanuts really. It's absolutely nothing. And what you're noticing is the wage budget here with Brighton going up and up and up. Now, it started off quite high at around 90 grand a week, but it continues to rise because the players we're selling, such as this guy right here, Vegard Foren, are on really high salaries. Foren is 1 rating higher than Matthijs de Ligt. However, he's on about 40 grand a week extra. And of course, de Ligt is much younger, just 16 years old, with 87 potential. And whilst we may be spending more money on bringing a player that is currently worse right now than the guy we sell in Foren, he is so much more cheaper in terms of his salary. It just makes a lot more sense, especially when you consider that big 87 potential in the future as well. So this who to sign for is very similar to the one I did with Celtic. If you watched that one, then you would have noticed me selling a lot of players who are on high salaries who, while still having a role in the first team, were just too pricey to, not to afford to keep because Brighton can't afford it, but they were just too pricey really for the long-term future. It really made no sense to keep them here when you could bring in younger players who have more potential on much cheaper salaries. So we'd sell Foren, we'd bring in de Ligt, and whilst we're taking one minor step back in terms of the player rating, we're taking a giant leap in making sure that our salary structure gets restructured here with Brighton. We begin to bring it down and also bring in younger players with more potential as well. It just makes a lot more sense. But the third sign I went in for was the Shakhtar midfielder Kovalenko. He's the young Ukrainian, 75 rated with 87 potential, 20 years old, valued at £6.5 million. Now, I'm yet to use this guy in FIFA, but I've heard nothing but good things about this guy. He is a CAM that can also play CM as well. He's got the engine speciality, very high stamina already at just 20 years old. 87 is the rating for stamina. He's a very good like-for-like replacement for Kayal once you've sold him. And he's on cheaper wages as well, and he's better too, with again 12 for his growth rating. You'd have to spend a little bit over his valuation to prize him away from Shakhtar Donetsk, but we got him for, again, I think it was £7.5 million, £1 million over his valuation, not too much more. And whilst that is almost all of Brighton's initial transfer budget, once you've been selling those players on high salaries and moving the slider along in your budget, you'll notice we still have money left over to spend because of the fact we're getting rid and shipping on some deadwood, and particularly players who, simply put, are on wages that don't represent true value for money. So Viktor Kovalenko was the third signing we made alongside the Ligt and Fosu-Mensah, so the young Ukrainian talent came in, and again 75 rated means he's been one of the best players in the Brighton team to begin with, out of 87 potential as well. This guy's just going to get better and better and better. I've heard nothing but good things about this guy, haven't tried him out yet, but when you look at those stats, technically so well rounded, mentally very good, physically very well rounded as well. High work rates, 4-star weak foot, 3-star skill, 6 foot. He's the type of guy that could play further forward or deeper or just naturally as a CM. A really good signing and certainly recommended. But as for yet more signings, we're after a fourth guy here. Augusto Batalla, a young Argentine goalkeeper currently playing for River Plate right now. You can get him for around his valuation. He's 20 years old, overall is 69, and he's valued at £1.5 million. We had our initial valuation bid accepted, and of course, once you sold the Finnish and Danish goalkeepers, you're going to need a new second choice. You're going to need a new backup. David Stockdale's very good, but you'll need someone as well for the long-term future. This guy grows 13 ratings, and his potential is 82, so he'll continue to get better while Stockdale's your number one in the first season, and then once you get to the Premier League, they'll be about the same rating, and you can choose which one you'd rather have as your number one in the top flight in season 2 once you get there. Or if you start off in the Premier League in the first season, you put Brighton in the Premier League, then you can just choose which one you want to have as your number one going forward. But Batalla is certainly a recommendation for a backup goalkeeper, a young, talented shot stopper. The only problem is his position is quite low, only 59, which is a little bit odd, really, because his stats seem to suggest he's a really good, young, talented goalkeeper, but positioning is very important in FIFA, so why it's only 59, I don't know, but that's very easy to train. Goalkeeper training in FIFA is extremely overpowered, so you can train at something very acceptable in no time at all. But the fifth and final signing I made for Brighton was one of these two left-backs right here, Antonio Barreca of Torino, or Rafa Suarez, young Portuguese left-back of Rio Ave. Now, they're both decent young talents, both low to mid-70s for their overall, and both of which have mid-80 potential. Barreca has one rating higher for potential. Rafa Suarez is 84 and grows 11 ratings. Barreca has potential of 85 and also grows 11 ratings. So either would be a fine choice for the left back role. And as you would have noticed, I was including Gaetan Bong as a part of a package deal, a swap deal, along with some money as well. Rio Ave rejected both of our bids. Torino rejected our initial bid but did accept our second bid. So we offered the young Italian left back a contract, and we decided to try and get this guy to the Amex Stadium in place of Bong. And of course, we sold Rosina earlier on in the episode as well. Pocognoli is currently on loan at Brighton, so we'll only be here for one season. And it took me a while to convince Barreca to swap to Rin for Brighton. I offered him, I think it was 3 contracts in the end, but eventually he decided, was it 2 contracts or 3 contracts? Well, you'll see in a minute. It was 2 or 3 contracts, and eventually he decided to come in. But as I expected, this was just so typical. I never really like to offer players in swap deals along with some money as well. I prefer to sell them flat out because I think that's the best way to get proper value for money. But I sometimes have struggle selling some of those sort of players that I want to get rid of, and it always seems to happen whenever I'm on the verge of signing a new player and including that player I don't want in a swap deal. I then get a transfer bid for that player, and as you'll see right now, Hull came in for Bong and offered me a deal which I would have accepted had I not included him as part of this swap deal along with the money for Barreca. So in the end, we just said no to the whole deal and decided to sign Barreca for £3.5 million plus Gaetan Bong. Bong was valued at £1.9 million, so overall that's £5.4 million, a little bit over the valuation of Barreca. However, you won't need Bong if you've got Pocognoli here on loan anyway, and you're going to sign a new left back. Of course, you keep Rossini, you'd have 3 left backs here to start off the game, and if you want a new left back, you'd have 4 if you bring in another one. You don't need that many. You only need 2 really. So sell Bong, sell Senior as well, keep Pocognoli, who's here on a year's loan, and bring in Barreca. We did so. He's got 85 potential, a very good young talented left back with high stamina already, and certainly someone I would recommend for a Brighton career mode. So in the end, we spent £19.75 million on 5 new players. That's a lot of money for a Championship team, almost £20 million, and also received £5 million for sales as well. But I think we did some good business. 5 players there with, well, ranging from 82 to 87 potential to 5 of them, and all of which should have a role in the first team in the first season as well. If not in the first 11, then at least on the bench. You can see I put the Ligt and Batalla on the bench, but Kovalenko, Fosu-Mensah and Barreca all went into the first 11 for the first season. 5 very talented young players in the game. As per normal, we'd simulate to the end of the season, see how Brighton would get on. A reminder, they were supposed to gain automatic promotion in the first season and reached around the 32 stage in the Cup. Well, they did succeed with the league objective. They finished in 2nd place, 1 point behind the Championship winners Newcastle, which I thought was really interesting, just like in real life. Brighton finishing in 2nd, Newcastle top, and 1 point being the difference between the two of them. They both finished 10 points fewer each than they got last year in real life. Brighton finished with 93 and Newcastle finished with 94, but regardless, same 1-2 as last year in real life. But the FA Cup was a failure though. They were supposed to reach around the 32 stage, and in the end they were knocked out in the 3rd round by Liverpool away at Anfield, and in the EFL Cup they were knocked out by quarter-finalists Everton in the 2nd round. And to be honest, getting knocked out by Premier League sides in the Cups is not really that bad anyways, let's be honest here. It would have been an underdog cup story, a giant killing if you will, if they were, why do I not know the phrase, a giant killing had they beaten those sides. So it's not really embarrassing to get knocked out before the round we were supposed to meet, which was around the 32 stage in the FA Cup. But the first season was still a success in my opinion. Brighton just needed to get themselves up to the Premier League. That's exactly what we did, and it would have been a massive failure had we not done that as well. When you take a look at this team here, it's a 3.5-star team, but it's only 1 or 2 players away from becoming a 4-star team in the Championship. It's a strong side. It's a really, really good team. There are some very, very good players in there in the first season. And again, for a career mode, this is without question one of my most recommended career mode teams to do for an RTG. A little bit of trivia here for you. This is the first career mode team I ever did on YouTube, Brighton. And certainly one I recommend for an RTG because there's so much you can do with it in the first season. We brought in 5 players and spent almost £20 million. This is a Championship side spending almost £20 million, bringing in some really, really good talents. And in the first season, if you don't put them in the Premier League and swap them in and start off in the Championship, you should be aiming for automatic promotion just like the board want in the first season. With this sort of team, it's really, really good, and this is certainly a very fun team to use in career mode, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will be checking them out in FIFA 18 once their real stadium is added in the game and they are in the Premier League. But that will end today's episode of Who to Sign For, guys. Hope you have enjoyed it. If you did appreciate the tips, then please do consider leaving a like. Thank you for watching. Have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you for the next episode in the Who to Sign For series very soon. Bye.